The 1970s, a decade of disco, bell-bottoms, and unfortunately, some of the most aesthetically challenged automobiles ever to roll off an American assembly line. While Europe was crafting sleek sports cars and Japan was perfecting fuel efficiency, American automakers were apparently having a collective fever dream. Today, we're counting down the 10 ugliest American cars of the 1970s that still make us wonder. What were they thinking? These automotive nightmares didn't just look bad. They looked apocalyptically bad. So buckle up, because we're about to take a ride through automotive history's Hall of Shame. But first, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got more automotive content coming your way every week. Number 10. AMC Pacer, 1975 to 1980. Starting our countdown at number 10, the AMC Pacer. Nicknamed the Flying Fishbowl, this car looked like someone took a normal car and inflated it with a bicycle pump. The Pacer was AMC's attempt to create a futuristic economy car, but the result was something that looked more like a space pod that crashed to Earth. With its massive greenhouse windows, disproportionately wide body, and that distinctive bulbous shape, the Pacer was supposed to be revolutionary. Instead, it became a punchline. The asymmetrical door design, where the passenger door was longer than the driver's door, only added to its oddball appearance. Sure, it had great visibility and was surprisingly roomy inside, but looking at a Pacer was like watching someone wear a suit 3 sizes too big. It wasn't just ugly, it was confusingly ugly. You'd stare at it trying to figure out exactly what was wrong, only to realize that everything was wrong. Number 9. The Ford Mustang II. Now, before you grab your pitchforks, hear me out. The original Mustang was an icon. Sleek, powerful, and undeniably cool. The Mustang II was none of those things. Ford took everything that made the Mustang great and threw it in a blender with a Pinto. The result was a car that looked like it was perpetually apologizing for existing. Those awkward proportions, the bloated front end, and the complete loss of the original's aggressive stance made this look more like a Mustang's embarrassing cousin than its successor. The worst part? Ford marketed this as the right car at the right time. The right time for what? Halloween? The Mustang II didn't just abandon the muscle car heritage, it ran away from it screaming. When your car makes people nostalgic for the original while the original is still fresh in memory, you know you've made a mistake. Number 8. Chevrolet Chevette, 1976 to 1987. If the automotive world had participation trophies, the Chevette would have a whole shelf full of them. This car didn't just lack style, it actively avoided it. The Chevette looked like it was designed by someone who had never seen a car before, only had it described to them over a bad phone connection. Those awkward angles, the completely flat surfaces, and proportions that seemed to have been calculated by a random number generator made this one of the most aggressively boring cars ever created. But boring might have been forgivable. The Chevette wasn't just boring, it was offensively plain. It was like Chevrolet gathered their design team and said, "What's the most car-shaped thing we can make with the least effort possible?" The Chevette was their answer, and it was wrong. Even worse, this thing stayed in production for over a decade. That's 11 years of automotive mediocrity rolling off the assembly line. Number 7. The Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Sedan of the mid-70s. Now, the Cutlass name had pedigree, but this particular iteration looked like it was melting in real time. The front end was an exercise in automotive confusion. A grille that seemed unsure of itself, headlights that looked surprised to be there, and a hood that appeared to be sliding off the car. The proportions were all wrong, with a body that seemed to have given up on any criteria of athleticism. This wasn't just a case of bad styling. It was actively offensive styling. The Cutlass Supreme Sedan looked like it was designed to be as unremarkable as possible, but somehow overshot into remarkably ugly territory. Number 6. Lincoln Continental Mark V, 1977 to 1979. If you ever wondered what a luxury car would look like if it was designed by someone who only understood luxury as bigger is better, the Mark V was your answer. This wasn't just a car, it was a rolling monument to excess. The Mark V was so long it needed its own zip code, so wide it couldn't fit through some drive-thrus, and so tall it created its own weather patterns. The proportions were completely divorced from reality, creating something that looked more like a luxury yacht that got confused and ended up on the highway. The worst part was the fake spare tire hump on the trunk. Not a real spare tire, just a fake bump to make the car look even more ridiculous. It was like Lincoln's designers sat around asking, "How can we make this car look even more absurd?" And someone raised their hand and said, fake, tire bump, and everyone applauded. Number 5. Ford Pinto Wagon, 1972 to 1980. The regular Pinto was already questionable, but the wagon version was like someone took everything wrong with the original and added more wrongness on top. The Pinto wagon looked like a regular car that had been stretched in the wrong direction by a funhouse mirror. The rear end was awkwardly extended, creating proportions that made no mathematical sense. It was too long to be compact, too short to be practical, and too ugly to be forgiven for either. But the real kicker was how it looked from the side profile, like a car that was perpetually surprised by its own rear end. The way the roofline extended back created this bizarre visual effect where the car looked like it was constantly doing a double take at itself. Safety issues aside, the Pinto wagon was an aesthetic disaster that somehow made it to production and stayed there for nearly a decade. Number 4. Plymouth Fury, 1975 to 1978. The name Fury suggested anger, aggression, power. This car suggested none of those things. Instead, it suggested that Plymouth's design team had given up on life. The Fury looked like it was designed by committee, a committee that had never met each other and communicated only through vague memos. The front end was a collection of random shapes that happened to include headlights, the side profile was aggressively bland, and the rear end looked like it was apologizing for existing. This wasn't just bad design, it was anti-design. The Fury looked like someone had started with a decent-looking car and systematically removed everything that made it attractive. What remained was this hollow shell of automotive disappointment. The police departments that used these cars probably chose them, hoping criminals would be so confused by their appearance that they'd surrender voluntarily. Number 3. AMC Matador Coupe, 1974 to 1978. The bronze medal for automotive ugliness goes to the AMC Matador Coupe. This car looked like it was designed by someone who had only heard rumors about what cars were supposed to look like. The Matador Coupe's front end was a masterpiece of confusion. A grille that seemed to be having an identity crisis, headlights that looked like they were trying to escape, and a hood that appeared to be melting. The side profile was even worse, with a roofline that made no aerodynamic or aesthetic sense. But the real tragedy was that AMC actually thought this looked good enough to put their name on it. This wasn't a case of, we ran out of time and had to ship what we had. This was, we genuinely believe this is attractive territory. The Matador Coupe was so ugly, it made other ugly cars feel better about themselves. Number 2. Chevrolet Monte Carlo, 1973 to 1977. Taking the silver medal in our ugliness competition, the Chevrolet Monte Carlo of the mid-70s. This car managed to be simultaneously overdone and underwhelming, which is actually quite an achievement. The Monte Carlo looked like someone had taken a decent car design and run it through a make-it-worse filter. The proportions were all wrong. Too long in some places, too short in others, and too confused everywhere. The front end was a collection of styling cues that seemed to be arguing with each other, and the rear end looked like it had given up trying to coordinate with the front. The worst part was the fake luxury touches that fooled absolutely no one. Fake wood grain, fake wire wheels, and enough chrome to supply a small mirror factory couldn't disguise the fact that underneath all the glitz was a fundamentally awkward-looking automobile. Number 1. Ford Elite, 1974 to 1976, and taking the crown as the ugliest American car of the 1970s, the Ford Elite. This car was so ugly, it's actually impressive. It takes real talent to create something this aesthetically offensive. The Ford Elite looked like it was designed by someone who had been locked in a room with nothing but pictures of other ugly cars for inspiration. Every single design element was wrong. The proportions, the angles, the curves, even the straight lines. It was like Ford's designers had been challenged to create the most unappealing car possible and had risen to meet that challenge with enthusiasm. The Elite managed to be both bland and offensive at the same time, which is truly a rare achievement. It was too weird to be boring and too ugly to be interesting. The Elite existed in this special space of automotive purgatory where it couldn't even be enjoyed, ironically. The fact that Ford thought this car was worthy of the Elite name suggests either a complete break from reality or the greatest practical joke in automotive history. And there you have it. The 10 ugliest American cars of the 1970s that still haunt our automotive dreams. These cars prove that the 1970s weren't just a challenging time for fashion. They were apparently a challenging time for anyone with functioning eyeballs. But here's the thing about these automotive disasters. They're part of our history. They represent a time when American automakers were struggling to adapt to new regulations, fuel crises, and changing consumer demands. Sometimes that struggle produced innovation, and sometimes it produced, well, the Ford Elite. Today, some of these cars have actually become collectible, not because they're beautiful, but because they're so uniquely awful that they've achieved a kind of reverse prestige. Did we miss any particularly offensive automotive abominations from the 1970s? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip through automotive purgatory, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more automotive content. Remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but sometimes the beholder needs to get their eyes checked. Until next time, keep those wheels turning and try not to let these cars follow you into your dreams tonight.